In placing IV access in the older adult, there's a lot of different things you can do, and each patient is very different. To generalize them, I'll use an alcohol wipe on their skin a lot of times because their skin is so flaky from those multiple medications that they take, or prednisone or something like that, that by putting the alcohol wipe on it, you kind of make everything translucent. You can see things that perhaps you didn't see before because of the dry, flaky stuff. And traction. Traction is the most important thing you can do to get IV access on somebody. By putting a little traction at the bottom of that vein before you stick it in, you can stop that vein from rolling back and forth. You can make that skin that's all flabby and foldy up, take it down, get that IV access. If a little bit doesn't work, use more, use more, use more. If you have to put your whole hand on it to do it, that's what you need to do. Those are the two simple things to do to get IV access, and if it takes somebody else to hold their arm down, that could be really important too, because a lot of the elderly are afraid, or with the dementia aspects, they won't want the IV. So you're working with bad skin, you know, loose skin, and then dementia, it's really tough to try to do that. So it's good to have your partner help you out. I definitely put a lot of traction below the site, pull that as taut as I can. I don't enter the skin right where I think I'm going to get the needle into the vein. I get the needle under the skin next to it and take a moment to make sure that the vein is still right where you want it, because odds are if you put it in, it's kind of pushed it away a little bit. So you put it in, put more traction again because you already are under the skin, and now you're kind of putting that needle and that vein next to each other and advance it from there. A lot of poking and prodding isn't going to help. You know, if you're not going to get it in the first 60 seconds or so, give up. Go to find something else. And the lack of the sub-Q fat doesn't let them stay where they need to go, so that's why you have to use a lot of traction, even if it's your whole hand, to stretch the skin over the vein. So that's the only way it'll stay still.
Clearly, when you have an unstable or a critical patient, you need to be able to get that peripheral access. And IV is typically where we go. Fortunately, many of us have access to an IO needle. We're still getting into that culture where it is acceptable to use the IO, particularly in a life-changing situation where we need to be able to push that medication rapidly, make sure we have that access. We can use the IO route for a critical situation rather than having to fight and struggle to get an IV.
When I was a resident back many, many years ago, when the nurses couldn't get an IV, from pediatrics all the way up through the older population, we were called, which is kind of interesting because I certainly think a pre-hospital person has more experience in starting a difficult IV probably than I do. But there were several things that I found that helped me tremendously. The first is if you take the blood pressure cuff on the upper arm and blow it up in between the systolic and diastolic pressure, you get maximal venous filling, meaning that you're impeding the outflow of the blood to the veins while you're still getting arterial blood coming in. So you should plump them up very nicely. I cannot tell you how often that has saved me in a situation where I needed rapid IV access and I couldn't get it. What I would recommend is if you have a BLS person with you, have them monitor the blood pressure cuff to make sure that it stays within that range, and within maybe 30 seconds, not very long, you will get very often a vein that you were unable to cannulate before being large enough that makes it easier.